I had the plumber install a new shower faucet when I had the tower retiled. The instructions that came with the faucet illustrated how far to have the faucet recessed relative to the tile. While the plumber installed it according to the manufacturer's specifications, it was sticking out too far. The manufacturer claims that it was within the acceptable range and it can stick out as far as an inch. However, it looks hideous. The reality is that they want to sell you a U-shin ring that goes behind the U-shin plate that came with the faucet, so rather than take any blame, they want to make some more money off the customer. The plumber should have known better and had the faucet recessed. Then it could have been moved forward if need be and used some spacers to still secure it to the wood that it's mounted on. I learned that the same model has issues and even saw it on an episode of Tiny House Nation where in their tiny bathroom it was sticking out too far. So this is a common issue with this model, the Moen Caldwell, and others as well. It appears that the only options are to tear out the tile and push it back, or go in from the back wall. Neither of these are viable options. I did not want to move the back plate forward by putting a ring behind it because that would look tacky, and I didn't want to tear out the tile and ruin this beautiful tile work and pay hundreds more dollars in trying to get the shower finished. And the back wall is not an option coming in from the back to try and adjust it because the back wall is the outside of the house. So naturally, I devised an alternative method to rectify the situation. The instructions said to put this plate on the wall to where the larger area would be flush with the front of the tile, and it is sticking out just a little bit because I was initially going to go with a different tile which was just a hair thicker. So anyway, this was basically installed according to the way the instructions said. So this was not installed incorrectly for the faucet to be sticking out an inch like it was. Removing the plate, you can see how tight of an area it is, but this is what we have to deal with when a faucet is installed according to instructions which are wrong. I found a tile guy who poured concrete to make the walls for the tile, and I had to clear out some of the excess concrete that was plastered that went behind where the black plate was that was covering the faucet when the tile work was done. So using a screwdriver, I'm able to wedge against there and pry out some of the loose ones, but you don't want to hit any of the pipes that are behind there. So as you can see, a nice flathead screwdriver, not my flathead, but the thing on the end of the screwdriver, is great at trying to clear out all this excess concrete, so you can get to the stud behind there. Of course, it is a very tight fit, so even by clearing a lot, it's still pretty tight. So basically, what you're going to do to actually be able to move the faucet back is have to take a saw and cut the stud on both sides by avoiding cutting the pipe. So I used a hacksaw because anything else is not really practical in such a tight area, and it was very tedious, a long and strenuous process, but the way to do it was using a hacksaw so you don't end up messing up and accidentally cutting the pipe, as you would with a larger saw or with an electrical saw as well. Holding a hacksaw with the bare hands is kind of hard on the hands, but fortunately there is something called a jab saw, which is basically a handle you can mount the hacksaw to and have better control. And this one was, I think, about $6 or $7, and I bought it at Tractor Supply. So anyway, you can get something like this to hold the hacksaw, and it's easier on the hands. I also found this cool saw at Lowe's, which has a hacksaw style blade and a wood cutting blade, and it's very, very thin. And this was useful on the part of the stud on the left side because I kept hitting the stud that is in the wall that it's mounted to, and this way it was allowing me to do larger cuts, but it was also tighter there and a lot more tedious. So nevertheless, I used this and the hacksaw and was able to get that cut. Now, one thing to note is as you get further down along that stud we're cutting, you have to go at a sharper angle because the way it's a circular opening, you don't want to end up cutting into the pecs. I also cut into the wood at a slight angle so that the blade is angled away from the pipe because that is the last thing you want to do is burst a pipe in there and then have a big water leak and have to retile the wall by having to tear it out to get to everything to fix. Now, as you're about to breach through on both sides, you want to put a couple pieces of wood, just some thin ones that go well with the curvature of the opening, underneath to help give it support. And then you're going to be basically taking another piece of wood to help push it back. And you're going to do this because you want to slightly adjust it backwards, and it is pretty hard to push back. But by using a piece of wood and pushing against the stud, it will slowly work its way a little further back to where you're able to put some shims in there between where you cut the stud. So then with a pair of really long needle nose pliers and some shims, I cut some at slightly different widths. You can use those to help determine which width you want. So by cutting a few at different widths, you're prepared so you don't have to go out and cut some as you're trying to work them in there. Using some liquid nails in a caulk gun, you want to squeeze some in there. Now, it wasn't really long enough to reach into the groove that it was cut, so using a tube that you stick to the end could do that, but I didn't have a tube handy when I was working on this, so instead I employed a different method where I smeared it onto the shims before I wedged on there, but I also put it on a piece of wood and pasted it on there as well. Before you let it dry, it's a good idea to put this on because the plate is screwed onto the faucet, and this way it helps it act as a clamp. So once you get that on, you can go ahead and install the faucet, and it should look much better than before. As you can see, the finished faucet looks so much better than it did when it was sticking out, and we did not have to remove the tile or get in from the back wall. So this is a way to fix a bad faucet job on a shower without having to do all this damage by ripping out walls. Just make sure you do this at your own risk and be careful from cutting into pipes. So here is what the faucet looked like before and after it was adjusted. I hope you found this video useful, and good luck as you try to adjust your own faucet from a fiasco based on professionals who don't install it right or companies that don't give proper directions. Thanks for watching.